Hello and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and the first one of the new year, actually, in studio, State Representative Tony Cabral. We go alphabetically in the rotation as we always do, and lo and behold, you're the first one. So you get the program for the new year off and running. So thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. Have an opportunity to talk a little bit with.
You got a busy day today, I know, so we will get right to it. Obviously, the last time we talked to you was prior to the election. Congratulations on re-election again. New governor, new secretary, not secretaries, but new elected officials at the top.
Yeah, new attorney general, a new state auditor.
I think the only one that stays is the Secretary of State, Galvin.
Yes.
Everybody else is new. What is that?
Well, the treasurer is also.
Oh, that's Deb, right?
Yeah.
Deb Goldberg. Yep. When you see that sort of transition, what does that mean legislatively for you? I mean, obviously the governor has her agenda, and everybody's got. So, what does that do legislatively for the body?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity to restart, sort of a fresh restart. Obviously, the governor's agenda and the lieutenant governor is an important one for us. We have now a Democratic governor. Well, not to say we did not work with the previous governor, which we did as a legislature. We did fairly well, worked with Charlie Baker fairly well. But we have a Democratic governor for the first time in a long time. She has an agenda. One of them is housing. One of the top items on her agenda is housing. Some other items is, of course, the MBTA. And eventually the MBTA also will impact us.
Later this year, hopefully.
Hopefully later this year. We're still on schedule. So we should be seeing the first train coming to New Bedford and leaving New Bedford towards the end of this year. So that's an important priority of hers, and also an important priority for us as well. The last time I was here, we talked a little about MBTA and the board of MBTA. How should the board be made up? I said that I believed that Boston should have a seat on that board, and I still believe that. I'm glad that the new governor, believes the same way. So she believes that Boston should have a member on that board, and I think it's only right. It is the capital of the state. The majority of the services provided by MBTA is in Boston or Greater Boston area. So I think they have a lot at stake. The city has a lot at stake. I mean, it is the economic hub not only of Massachusetts, but of course New England, really. So I think it's important for Boston to be at the table whenever decisions are being made by the MBTA. So,
and I know last time you had said it's important for New Bedford's and southeastern Mass to be heard, at least because of the economic prospects that the commuter rail brings. I mean, New Bedford is growing economically. There's a lot of things happening, so the train's going to be more and more important.
Yeah, the train is going to be more important, but I think people have to look at the train not just is going to be a ride between Boston and New Bedford and Boston, but you're going to have an opportunity to stop at. There'll be additional stops. Yep. And some of those will create opportunities for people to come to New Bedford or people to work outside of New Bedford. There will be stops in Taunton. On some of the trains, there will be stops in Bridgewater, Brockton, right. Other places like that. Canton, for example. So these are opportunities also for folks who live in those communities or folks who live in the New Bedford area to actually commute, not just to Boston, but commute to these other communities in case they have a job or they want to go see or shopping or whatever it might be.
Right. I'm curious because you've been through this before. You've worked with a number of governors, both Republican, Democrat, during your tenure. Does it take time to get things going, I guess, overall on Beacon Hill when somebody is newly sworn in to that office?
It does, because the new governor, in this case, this particular year, being the first year in office, she has a little more time to submit her proposal, her budget proposal, I should say. Yeah. She hasn't done much first to submit that first, quote-unquote, budget proposal from the governor. Right. Normally that has to be in by like the third week of January. The governors, usually that's the schedule that they have to submit, except on the first year of the governor's term. So that sort of slows down a little bit, puts off the whole process a few weeks, and that's okay because we in the House, we are prepared. The budget has to start in the House, as you know, and we've gone through these cycles quite a number of times.
Right. Well, and the House has the same leadership
Yes.
at the moment. So you folks are up to speed, as it were.
We are, and we have ideas as well on how we should spend. How we should put
Come
together.
on.
Well, let's put it this way: instead of calling spending, how we put together a budget,
Right.
and what items are priorities as well. I mean, I think some of them will coincide with the governor, and I think I hope it does. I mean, the idea is to work with the governor and listen to the governor and see what kind of priorities she has, and it's important to work in conjunction with the governor and work well. Will be some items, I'm sure, that we'll agree to disagree, but usually those are not major items. The major priorities usually sort of in sync with the administration.
And one thing too is that the dollar amount is pretty much going to be the same. I mean, the House knows what the money is. The governor
Right.
knows what the money is. So it's not a question of, well, we think there's going to be more money. I mean, traditionally, you folks all agree that this is the money.
Yes,
And
there
then
is-
you've got to,
Yeah.
the dispersing of it is different, but the amount is there.
Yeah, to begin with, there is an agreement between the House, Senate, and the governor's office around what is the growth in revenue that we
Right.
might have. And sometimes in the past we've seen there is no growth, right? But in the last few years has been substantial growth of revenue. The projections for the next fiscal year is a little lower than the previous fiscal year. They've agreed to around the growth being around 1.6. So that's slightly less than what we've seen in the past. But that's from the point where we are today, right? From
Right.
the amount that we are today.
Yep.
So it gives us some ability to continue with some of the projects we started. The legislature funded previously in other fiscal years. And of course, we have to look at inflation. We have to look at all those issues that.
And that's going to take a chunk out of the budget. I mean, for out of things that you want to fund, not you personally, but
Right.
everything.
It will, of course.
The
it will.
inflation is going to. Healthcare's up. Just product, fuel, everything's up.
Everything
And
that the state also has to buy
Right.
or pay will be impacted by that, of course.
Do you find too the first year of the 2-year cycle, a legislative session? Do you find that again you guys are finding a footing because you have new colleagues now?
Yes, 22 on the House.
So does that? I don't want to say slow it down, but is it a slower process so they're up to speed as well?
I don't think it's a slow process for them. I mean, they have to come up to speed, obviously, but it's not up to us to wait for them to come up to speed.
Yeah.
It's up for them to catch up to us in that sense. Of course, it's a lot for some of them. Will be a learning curve, and that takes some time for some of them. But usually they adapt and they adjust pretty quickly. I mean, the idea is to get as much information as you can. You got to read. You got to study. You got to listen.
It's a lot of reading and a lot of listening.
Yes, and then you get up to speed to a certain degree. Of course, the longer you are there are benefits to that because you really get to know how the process really works well, and your constituents will benefit from that, obviously.
As we talk about the budget, I know a couple of things that are on the table to add some revenue. First, the sports betting has started. It's not online yet, but it has started. It's taken a long time to get to this point. Obviously, the debate was extensive, and finally it was approved. Just your thoughts. How do you feel about it now that it's underway? Are you pleased with the way it's been managed to get it on track right now? No pun intended.
Yeah.
Is it going to make? Is it going? Do you feel it's going to provide the funding that it's supposed to?
Well, all indications at right now, and it's early. They just started. It's all just in person. The online side of it is not allowed yet. It will be in the next few weeks. But I think you're going to see the projected revenues come through. I don't think it's a huge Eventually, I don't think it's going to be a huge amount of revenue.
Okay. I think that's what people think too.
Right. So, but any little revenue has. In this case, we were losing out to other states, our neighboring state of Rhode Island, for example, and others. So I thought we needed to bring ourselves up to par with those other states and keep our dollars in Massachusetts as much as we can.
Sort of on the aside, because now casino gambling's been around for a little bit, and obviously you've been involved in that issue for years.
Yes.
Because I know, has casino gambling had the impact, plus or minus, that you thought it would when it was finally implemented and all the talk about it?
Well, I think the pandemic kind of slowed that down, right, for a while. But I think it's coming back. We haven't seen the problems that some folks predicted we were going to see in terms of folks being addicted to gambling and all those other issues. There are some, and those have been actually pleasantly surprised that those issues have been really not like in the headlines, because obviously that's not having the impact that we thought it might have. But in terms of the revenue, is actually at this point more than what we had originally projected.
Okay.
So there's more revenue coming in than we thought it would come originally. And I think once we come out of this whole pandemic mode, because some people still don't want to go out, some people don't want to be in big crowds or anything like that, especially the casino over at in Everett. I mean, that's a humongous place.
It's expanding too.
And it's going to expand exactly, and it's a beautiful place too. I mean, there's other activities you can go. You can go just to. Eventually, you're going to be able to go over there to see a show, for example. That's part of the expansion. You're going to be able to. You can go to a restaurant now without even gambling, right? So there's other activities that you can go without gambling if you don't want to gamble. It can be a night out to a nice finding
dinner and
restaurant,
a show,
and a show at some point. So I think all of that, and I think the shows, once the shows come into play, will help also the revenue side.
So you feel, it sounds like too, what you're saying too is the process worked in a sense of establishing casino gambling in Massachusetts, because it does sound like it's doing as it's hoped it would have done.
Right. I mean, the Gaming Commission has done a very good job in setting it up, managing it, expectations, and what's required for those facilities to comply with and how they should be run. I think the Gaming Commission has done a very good job with that.
And you guys were in the trenches, though, even before this is all established. So that's why I'm saying you have talked about this issue for years.
Yes.
So
I'm hoping that in the future, and I'm sure it would be nice to have an opportunity for Southeastern Mass as well to have something, right?
Right.
Will that happen? I mean, I think there's always that possibility. I think the idea of limited number of places in Massachusetts, I think that was a good decision. We didn't want to have all kinds of these facilities springing up everywhere.
Because the money's not going to be there then.
Right.
They're not going to survive.
So I think the number of locations, I think eventually, an additional location might be possible, and hopefully, if that's the case, hoping to be somewhere in southeastern Massachusetts.
The other thing that I know people have talked about as far as revenue for the state, the millionaire's tax, I know, is in. People voted for it. It's now law. It's
law.
in there. I know one of the big issues right now is, and the money's going to go to transportation and education. But I know I was reading in the paper that one of the biggest thing is how's the money going to be divided.
Right.
A lot of people seem to think the 50-50 approach is the way to go, but nobody knows for sure.
Well, I think that's still up for discussion. All of us, including myself, and the new governor has already talked to this issue, that we got to make sure that the money does go for education and transportation. What's the divide? I think you have to look at the needs as well. I think transportation needs a lot of investment, so does education. And we have the Student Opportunity Act that we need to continue to fund for the next 7 years and beyond. We need to look at our higher ed education as well. The tuitions are, in some cases, let's say if you want your child to go to Amherst, for example, UMass Amherst, it's almost like paying for tuition at a private college.
Yeah,
private
we were
university.
talking about that last time briefly. We didn't get into a lot of it, but the higher ed costs, and it's unbelievable right now. And you're such a strong advocate for UMass Dartmouth that even the kids that want to go to UMass Dartmouth, and a lot of them are first in the family, the funding is the issue.
Yeah, we got to make public universities and public colleges affordable for the working folks, for people, for the working class and the middle class, because that's the opportunity. That's the way for them to succeed and move forward, their kids and their grandkids. Right now, in some cases, some of that public education is not as affordable as it should be. Again, it's public. Right. So public university, we have a commitment to fund. We need to get back to adding additional funding for those institutions. And I think question one in this case, the so-called millionaire's tax, is going to help us do that. And also as you know, we have a scholarship fund. The state runs a scholarship fund as well. So other kids that might not go to a public institution, even going to a private institution, will have more access and hopefully more ability of those scholarships being bigger, right? And I think that's how it's by direct investment in the public universities and then having a healthy scholarship fund. I think that will go a long way to help folks move, for those who their choice is to go to a 4-year college or a 2-year college.
Right. Because we're still talking BCC. I mean, when you're talking state education, you're talking community colleges and the 4-year colleges, right? That's right.
I mean, even Bristol Community College, even a community college level. I mean, I remember years ago, people used to pay per semester, maybe $600, $800 per semester to go to a community college. Today is in the thousands already. So, so I think we need to make those, especially the community colleges in particular, they need to be more affordable. There are some discussions going on from the governor, the new governor, to the Senate president. The House leadership hasn't spoken publicly too much on this issue yet, but the governor would like to have community colleges be free of tuition for those who are 25 or older if they don't have a degree yet, or if they haven't gone to college yet, right? Now, my understanding is the Senate president thinks should be free regardless of age. So that's a debate that you're going to see. I think it will. When we say free, of course, the word is tuition. There are fees associated with the tuition. Right. Nobody is saying that they're not going to pay something. But even if you were able to eliminate the tuition itself, you almost cut that cost in half, in 50%. So we'll see how that debate is going to go. I think it's important to really, those are entry points, right? Community colleges are very entry points, and some young people or older people need those kinds of entry points if they want to improve on their education, their possibilities of a different job or a new job, or even the present job that they might have. They might need to go back to school and get additional skills in order to really perform the job that they have. Because, the workplace is changing as well.
Right. And I would just say, too, that I don't know of any other region in the state that's more, I don't want to say dependent, but reliant on 2 colleges or 2 institutions in southeastern Mass is with UMass Dartmouth and Bristol Community College. Really.
Yep, that's it. Unless you want to go a little further up, then you have Bridgewater, right? But that's the 2 big places.
They're 2 hugely important institutions. Yes. Just on the aside, too, I know one thing that we were talking about off camera, the school meal program. Legislature stepped up to cover for the rest of this year, too, but I know that you folks are looking to make this reality and keep it going.
Yes, we are, and I'm a big supporter of that. There is a lot of support in the House, and I know there is some support in the Senate as well to keep that going. I think a free lunch, the free breakfast, and the breakfast is not a full-blown breakfast.
You said it's a to-go thing.
It's a to-go, pick up and go kind of breakfast. It's very important for kids to have a meal, and in some cases In terms of lunch, that's some kids. That's the only hot lunch sometimes that they have an opportunity to have that day. So, and that's important for education. You cannot learn if you're with an empty belly, right? You just can't. And I think it's important for us to support our children and our kids that way.
And the reason too is the federal government was funding that, and they are no longer funding it.
Yeah, there was an Obama administration initiative. We used to have lunches, as you know. It was a mean test to it, meaning by income. So you had
number
reduced
of kids,
lunch, income for the household, and so forth. We think it's best that, regardless of income, everybody qualifies. Everybody is entitled to it. Everybody has access to it. I think that's a better approach.
Obviously a lot going on. I know obviously there's a lot going on at the harbor with offshore wind and just the development along the harbor that obviously it's your district. It's very busy going on right now. Things just do seem to be moving forward down there quickly.
They are, and I think we're going to need more space for the offshore wind. So we have to develop other areas like in the North Terminal area as well. I'm excited. I think this is a great opportunity. I think we are at a point in New Bedford in the South Coast that we're going to be able to see actually jobs and investments coming out of this new industry. And we are right at the epicenter of that. And we have to take advantage of that. I mean, we have to compete, and that's the other issue. Not only us in Southeastern Mass, but the state has to compete with the other states. We have to issue additional RFPs around procurement for additional wattage. We have to do that. We cannot lay back and wait, or else other states will, because that has implications on the supply chain of that industry. I mean, if we develop and we compete, we have an industry growing at a fast pace, then the supply chain will be located near us rather than being someplace else. And that's where a lot of the jobs come into play as well, is that supply chain for that industry.
Right, there's so many ancillary businesses that are going to impact. Are you comfortable that the governor is going to continue the momentum that's been built over the last few years?
I believe she will, but I think the legislature itself is committed to that. I know the House is very committed, and we'll continue pushing. I have filed legislation myself on that issue of having the state step up and bring our total from right now we are around 3,600, 3,800 megawatts as the target. Eventually, we want to go to 5,800 or 5,800, right? And I filed legislation that we would move to 8,000 megawatts, and I think we can go higher than that.
And this is over time as well.
It's over time, of course. Over time, but we would like to, in order to stay competitive, we need to do it within a certain time frame, and I'm looking in that time frame to be 2030, for example. It would be great for us to be around 2030, around 8,000 megawatts or greater.
Right. Yeah. We got about 4 minutes left, but I want to touch base too, because it's a new legislative session for you. A lot of times your priorities don't change, because I know education's huge, is a huge thing for you. I know one thing that, not a hot button subject, you've talked about it for years, but housing is going to be huge. What are some of the things that you are looking at for the district this year?
Well, I'm looking around education. As you said, education continues to be a big priority of mine, from school lunches to various opportunities in expanding the opportunities, making sure the funding is there for the kids to thrive. We have to look at also at the vocational education. There are, I think, two issues. One is the admissions policy right now, and the other one is capacity. Even if you, because I know throughout the state, including our own in New Bedford, they could use additional seats, in other words, additional classroom space to really admit, all those who would like to participate. But I think, from my perspective, that's an issue. That's going to be a hot issue around both capacity and admissions, and how we admit kids to a vocational high school. I think what people have to remember, that's a public school. It's another public high school, and should be treated as a public high school, not a private high school. So kids should have the opportunity to go there if they choose to, or their parents would like them to go. Right now, that doesn't happen because of some of the admission policies that exist now.
Yeah, and there's a lawsuit that just has recently been filed.
Yes,
with the state.
that's right. So we're going to be following that. We're working. That's an item that I'm going to be working on as well. Of course, offshore wind, economic development around the waterfront, and South Coast Rail. We still have to stay on top of that because once the train arrives, there are other things to do. We want to electrify that line, and the governor wants to electrify as well, right? Not only our South Coast Rail line, but the other train, public transit. And we need to begin to plan for phase 2 of South Coast Rail.
And the timeline right now is still late November, early December of this year that we'll have the first train down here.
And and housing,
that's
just
not long.
very quickly, in housing, that's a big issue. That's something that is something that I'm going to be really focused on as well, because the city has to take advantage as well of specific programs to increase not only market rate housing, but also some additional affordable housing. We have a state program that I've actually worked on it from day one with Secretary Bialaki as the chair of the Gateway Cities Caucus. It's called HDIP, which is House Development Initiative Program, which tries to in some of the cities like New Bedford, Fall River, and others, sometimes it's difficult to put all the finance pieces together, and sometimes when they do that for that particular development, housing development, then there's still there's a financial gap. So that's where this program comes in, fills in that financial gap and makes the project happen. I know New Bedford is going to also, the city itself, I know in conversations with the city administration and the mayor, they are going to step up a little bit as well on that particular, to try to take more advantage of that program. And that's key for us as well in that area. I mean, I have office hours, as you know, every month, and on the last 6-7 months, the majority of the folks who come to my office hours is about housing.
We got to leave it there. We're out of time. We'll talk about it next time, because I know it's a huge issue, and it's not an easy answer as well.
It's not an easy answer, but it's something that we need to try to help our folks out.
Good seeing you again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
for the
coming in.
invitation. We'll come back soon.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. State Representative Tony Cabral, our guest. My thanks to him. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
You think we've done for you?
You know, it took 20 years, and I got my third child, who was 17 at the time.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
I ain't never felt so much love before in my life.